Welcome to GoJo Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield and I still holding it down. One last day here in the DraftKings studio in Boston, festively coiffed and ready for the holiday season. Yeah. We are brought to you by Wrangler, made for the ride of life. Save 15% or more on your first Wrangler.com order with promo code GOJO15. Got an awesome one for you, as always. Download, subscribe, rate, review. Tell somebody we're live 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, right here on the DraftKingsNetwork.com, DraftKings YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku. Tons of cool and fun places there. Our buddy Nicole Auerbach, senior college football reporter and writer over at The Athletic, going to stop by as we are on Board of Trustees meeting watch this morning. Florida State yesterday, it was reported by Nicole and others, is going to have that Board of Trustees meeting, I believe, at 10 a.m. Eastern, so right when we get done here. We'll talk with Nicole about the potential causes, the things that went into that, the ramifications going forward for them and for college football. But, Dad, before we get to any of that, the Dodgers physically cannot stop spending money on baseball. We were all jacked up to come in here and talk about, and we will, what you saw on Thursday Night Football with the Rams last night continuing their march towards playoff status. But it appeared they showed shots in the game. I'm not sure, Dad, if you saw them. So, again, you were on the call for Westwood One last night. Did you see Shohei Otani in person? Because they kept showing him on camera out there.
So I was down on the field before the game, and certainly you've been down in the field with me here when I've done a game in LA. It's been with the Chargers before. Usually there are stars here. There are a couple of comedic actors that we love. Craig Robinson was down there, and Jason Segel was down there as well. I mean, one of the couple of the funniest guys out there. So it was very cool to see them down there. And then the kind of the low rumble and then into the cheers started as this massive humanity walked out of the tunnel. I'm like, who's that? And I look, and let me tell you, dude is big. Shohei Otani comes walking down the sideline, and so I walked over that way. I wasn't going to have a conversation with him, but I just wanted to kind of measure Dude is got some size.
Yep.
I mean, he was holding they gave him a jersey, so he was holding that, talking to people through his interpreter and such. NFL Films was all around him, shooting him. But, oh, my gosh, he got a louder cheer than the team did at first. Then, obviously, as we'll talk about, the Rams played really well. Holy smokes, dude has got some size. Dude has got some money. I said in the broadcast, he should have enough money to buy everybody in the stadium a drink. And obviously have a ton left over, but he got a monster applause, and now he's got a running buddy who, not quite his size by any stretch of the imagination, but still making a whole lot of money.
It will make for some great odd couple photos because, to your point, Shohei Otani is our large Japanese son. He peels the skin off baseballs routinely and clobbers it, I said, with the sound that the bat makes in Super Smash Brothers, when you really waylay that thing every time. He is there to hurt baseballs. The other thing we saw on the broadcast is what led to this overnight news, because on the broadcast, the Rams social media team put out a shot of a jersey in the back of the end zone with the name Yamamoto on the backside of it. That being Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the Japanese pitching phenomenon that was the prize free agent of this offseason, that is now also a Los Angeles Dodger, as they announced last night a 12-year, $325 million deal, sources told ESPN. The Dodgers will pay an additional $50 million posting fee to Yamamoto's previous club, the Oryx Buffaloes in Japan, and he will also receive about a $50 million signing bonus. But, Dad, as you pointed out, much smaller in stature is Yamamoto, a 5'10", 176-pound pitcher who, based on everything we've heard, Dad, won 3 straight MVPs and the equivalent of the Cy Young over in the Japanese Baseball League, and came in as this heralded prospect that we heard the Yankees were potentially linked to, all of the same usual big-name suspects. But the Dodgers have now spent $1 billion between two players in a way that's got to drive the rest of Major League Baseball insane.
And the thing about this, there were plenty of other teams that were out there, right around this amount. So he had his choice, and he chose to go to the Dodgers. You could see what they're building out there. So it wasn't for lack of trying by other teams. It's not like, the Dodgers just outspent everybody. There was a handful of teams including, the Yankees. So there are now 3 pitchers who have over $300 million contracts. Garrett Cole got a 9-year, $324 million deal, so he's averaging $36 million a year, where Yamamoto is averaging a measly, $27 million a year. Somehow he has to get by on that. And then the third pitcher is Shohei. Shohei is obviously got the $700 million deal. So 3 pitchers over $300 million. Garrett Cole, has a Cy Young under his belt. He has done well with the Yankees in his 4 seasons there. So that one seems to be paying off. So we'll see where this one goes. The thing is not the size of that frontline starter. We talked about a size already, 5'10", 176. So you wonder what his real size is, because we all know how that works. Is he really 5'10"? Is he really $176? So do you wonder about the endurance of this? With his size over a season? Obviously, none of the teams that were throwing the money at him are worried about it too much. This guy's got a multitude of pitches that he uses. So just a super, this is one of those where, kind of like Atlanta last year, I think led the way. I think they had 104 wins, and it was like, but man, if they don't close this thing out, it's what a failed season. To multiply this by about 100, right? Or maybe by $1 billion.
I was just going to say, we know the number here that's the force multiplier. You're right, Dad. There are going to be people lining up for miles waiting to take this team down and kick them in the shins if they do anything but win the World Series. It won't matter. They could lose anywhere along the way right up till the very end. Right. And if they don't win the whole thing, they are absolutely going to be treated as a laughing stock because of everything they've put in. And because I'd imagine there's a lot of other really jealous people, because to your point, this one wasn't as financially out of reach as maybe the Shohei deal was for a lot of people, which is still insane to say because none of this money was deferred. He's going to get this all in real time. It's not like the Shohei deal in that regard. But yeah, Dad, this one being closer for other teams. I saw our buddy Jared Carabas over at Baseball is Dead lamenting the fact that he felt like the Red Sox were never even really in it because there were more teams that were involved in all this, and that somehow the Dodgers' gravitational pull, and I'm sure the money that they were able to save in the interim from the way they structured the Shohei Otani deal, all help make this possible.
Oh, it's exactly right. I mean, what Shohei did, and I was talking to some people last night, and they seemed to be surprised that you could defer as much money as Shohei did. And I said, well, that's kudos to, whoever, when they were doing the CBA, because it's right there in the CBA. There's no limit to the amount you can defer. So I don't know if teams thought players would defer as much money as Shohei did. I mean, who says, yeah, I get $700 million, but I'm going to wait 10 years to get $680 million of it? It seems absurd to say, but when you're making 45, 50 mil off the field with your marketing, you can afford to do that, because a lot of people say, I want to make all my money now, so it's working for me. He's going to be okay. He's got enough money working for him where he can defer it and help out the Dodgers. So, I mean, that is I'm not going to sit here and say the ultimate sacrifice, because the guy's still getting $700 million. I'm going to be real careful about that.
Thank you for your service, Shohei.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, what can we do for you because you sacrificed for us? But it was a hell of a move. That was, that worked out, is going to work out incredibly well. Hopefully, we'll see if the Dodgers can close this thing out, as we're nowhere near, as we're still a few months away from opening day.
Yeah, this really is starting to feel like the Eagles' super team of destiny from a few years ago. And it's going to be fascinating. What I will say right off the bat, because you mentioned Yamamoto, not the prototype size. He's a guy, you hear about his regiment over there, not based in weightlifting. A lot of it's more the stuff that you would hear around Tom Brady and the TB12. Right. It's pliability, it's body weight strength stuff. And the one thing we do know, as a lot of that's going to be the focus of people's life, is we at least know his dog's name.
Boom.
We looked this up. Remember, Shohei Otani, famously so secretive about his free agent process and everything around his life that we couldn't even get his dog's name when prompted. Yamamoto apparently rarely travels without his tiny, fluffy dog, I think it's Mikan, who's named after Japan's famous Mandarin orange, whose peel almost matches the dog's fur color. So we know his dog's name. Apparently, he is also a big dog enthusiast, so him and Shohei will have that in common, which is very exciting.
That's obviously what pulled him to the Dodgers, was the dog connection.
Exactly right.
That must have been it. Yeah.
They got on Zoom and they both put their dogs up there in the chat.
The dogs made a deal.
They're saying hi. They're waving.
And you know what? I'm all for it. Yep. I mean, I am all for it. They're carrying around their dog like an accessory, and he named his dog after an orange peel color. So, hey, good on him. Good on him. He was a star with the Onyx Buffaloes, or Oryx Buffaloes, I'm sorry. And now let's see what he can do in the States, because you know other players. You know how that works, Mike. When there's a big money guy, all you want to do is try and take him down. So let's see how it plays over here, from there to here, and what goes on. I mean, they're setting themselves. Remember, though, Shohei isn't going to pitch this coming season. He's just going to bat and then pitch the following season. So we have to wait a little bit on that, but. Man, they are building something big time there.
They are. And like you mentioned, baseball is a sport uniquely positioned to allow people to take down giants because of how the sport's structured, because you're not going to be getting the full arsenal of Shohei's abilities early on in this deal, and especially this season when all eyes are going to be most trained on them. Again, I'm sure it's like the Shohei deal where everyone outside is frustrated because this team is spending into oblivion and just trying to buy a title in a way that most sports fans find reprehensible. But that's showbiz, baby. And for the rest of us now, we get ready to sit here and watch yet another Japanese superstar try and make his way over to America as successfully as his counterpart recently did. But, Dad, let's not bury the lead too much longer. You were at a football game last night while this baseball news broke out. And, Jesse, we did have a football game that broke out with a pretty clear message sent by the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, vastly improving their playoff chances with that 30-22 win over the Saints. Matthew Stafford threw for 328 yards, 2 touchdowns, and rookie wide receiver Puka 9 catches for a career-high 164 yards and a score. So after the game, Sean McVay asked if Nicole should actually be in the conversation for Offensive Rookie of the Year.
He's outstanding. I couldn't be more grateful for the contributions. And, what a freaking run on the jet sweep. Has a bunch of plays through the pass game. You guys have seen it week in and week out. You talk about that balance. You can't have the balance if you don't have receivers that are willing to dig out support and do some of the things that he does. You see around the league, Stroud's had a great year, but this guy is – he would get my vote. And, he's really special. But the best part about him is he doesn't worry about those things. He worries about, just being a great teammate, continuing to improve his game. And sure love this team. And he's one of those guys that you really love.
Puka's been one of the best stories of the year. And obviously the Rams needed this win.
Yeah, Dad, this is them continuing their march there. Puka Nacua is like watching a deer loose on the field. With how big, fast, and strong that young man is, he does afford the Rams something that I think we saw on full display last night, Dad, because this isn't a lot like the Rams from a couple of years ago where they went to a bunch of multi-tight end stuff here. This is back more towards the original Rams that were one tight end, three wide receivers. But when you've got big wide receivers like him, guys like Cooper Kupp, who are willing to go and mix it up in the box and do some of the difficult work like that, it affords you a lot of options, and we saw a ton of them on display with this Rams offense last night.
Well, I mean, we saw a guy in Puka Nacua picking up the slack, remember, because Cooper Kupp last year had the ankle, and this year started out with the hammy. But you had this guy that really picked up the slack. And you're right about the receivers. Last night there were only 4 players that caught a ball for them. It was Puka, it was Cooper Kupp, it was Tyler Higbee, the tight end, and Demarcus Robinson had himself a night. Demarcus Robinson came in with 14 catches for the season and almost got half of that in one night. He had 6 for 82 and a touchdown in this game. So, I talked about this last week with the Detroit Lions when they beat Denver, when I called that game, is the array of talent that Detroit has on the field and the options. The Rams had the same thing. The options that they have to go to on the offensive side. And then, oh, by the way, throwing Kyren Williams in the backfield, who now has 600-yard games this year, 3 in a row, as he rushed for a little over 100 yards last night. But Puka, it's an interesting thing with Rookie of the Year. C.J. Stroud was a lock.
Yep.
Now, C.J. Stroud, is missing some time with the concussion. Let me give you the numbers on Puka and what he's going to do. And I would imagine he's going to do it. He is now the rookie record for receptions is Jalen Waddle with 104. Puka has 96. So he needs 8 receptions, 9 to break that in 2 games. Waddle did that in 2021. But this is the one. He now has 1,327 receiving yards. The record is 1,473. It's 146 yards away in 2 games he needs. And that record, and this is always what amazed me, we're in a passing league right now. That record is held by none other than Bill Groman in 1960 with the Houston Oilers. It's amazing. The rookie receiving yardage record is 1960. The rookie receiving yard record for tight ends is 1961. In Mike Ditka. So, I mean, that blows my mind. But Puka is in great position to get both of those right now. So that's very, very impressive. And then how about this? You want to the Rams are the 5th youngest team in the NFL right now. And you talk about young talent on the field, really for both sides. For players 23 and younger, Kyren Williams leads the league with now 8 games of 100 scrimmage yards. Second is Puka with 6 games of 100 scrimmage yards. Third is Chris Olave from the Saints, who now has 5 games. After last night, he had over 100 yards receiving. And he was the only real threat last night. This game was not 30-22.
No.
It was not as close as that at all. New Orleans had 2 big plays in that game, a 45-yard touchdown to Rashid Shaheed, and then a 35-yard touchdown to A.T. Perry. After they blocked a punt, all of a sudden it got interesting because they blocked a punt, and I'm like, hey, 2 scores, 1 score, get the 2-point conversion, onside kick, see what you can do. No sooner do I say that, they throw the pass to Perry, get the 2-point conversion, and I'm like, my God, we got a few minutes to go, and now it's a 1-score game. But the Rams did not let that happen. They held them off. And going forward, we were talking about this, of what they can do if they get to the playoffs. 3-6. And now 5-1? They were 3-6 and now 5-1 since their bye. And to me, still, Mike, the biggest improvement on that team is the offensive line, who before their bye week in Week 10 was 29th in giving up pressure, the pressure rate that they gave up. Since then, they're 6th So they have really, really shored up the offensive line and protecting Stafford, who has been nothing but money. Stafford now has 5 games straight of multiple touchdown passes. And the Rams were tied with San Francisco with 4 straight games of over 28 points. They went to 5 straight. If San Francisco wants to keep pace, they have to score over 28 against Baltimore on Monday night, which is we're all looking forward to that matchup, for we'll see. So if the Rams get in, this is one of those, again, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. If they get in, it doesn't matter where they get in. They're good enough to make a run right now.
They're the Buffalo Bills of the NFC. They said it on the broadcast last night, and it's 100% true. They're the team that's had to scratch and claw their way in because of some weird stuff that went on in the majority of their season that got them to a record that truly was not indicative of who this team is. The thing in the place their youth showed up, I think, last night that could be the one cause for concern if you were looking for it for a Rams team that I think is otherwise pretty excellent at this point, is what you mentioned. Back-to-back games against inferior opponents where they struggled to finish in the way that you would like. They let Washington make the score a little closer than it needed to be last week. They let the Saints hang around a little bit too long at the end of this week. And then in the red zone this week, Dad, drive stalled when they got down to that area of the field. 3 of 6 inside the red zone. But defensively, what Raheem Morris has done with everyone around Aaron Donald, what Ernest Jones has turned into as a force at linebacker for them, and the way they were able to make Derek Carr uncomfortable, that looks like a playoff team, and that looks like a playoff team capable of winning games. And you said it, because of the youth, because of the way they've hit, especially on draft picks in the 3rd round and beyond, it looks like they're set up for a while. And Matthew Stafford drank out of the fountain of youth at some point along the line. It's got me excited because they're a legitimately fun, dynamic football team to watch, and they seem to have some staying power based on what's here.
Yeah, listen, we all talked about it. They sold their soul for the Super Bowl ring, and they got it. But now they're hitting on these later draft picks, and it's scoring for them. You mentioned Ernest Jones, the leading tackler, because Aaron Donald in now 6 games has just half a sack. Now, he's still getting a million pressures on the quarterback, don't get me wrong, and tackles behind the line. But you hit on a Kobe Turner, a rookie nose tackle, a Byron Young, a rookie outside linebacker. Those 2 are the leading rookie sackers in the league. They're 1 and 2 as rookies in the league, so you're getting help from those youngsters. It's a pretty impressive team.
Yeah, remember when people were asking, was it worth it for the Rams to do it to get a Super Bowl? Yeah, it makes it harder. Be better at your job, like the Rams have been.
GoJo and Golic. It is time to turn our attention to the college game with our Modelo College Football Weekend Preview, brought to you by Modelo, the mark of a fighter. We have yet another college bowl game on the docket as Georgia Tech and UCF, shout out Emerson Latzia, battle in the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl. Both teams 6-6. So going into this one with like a nice little send-off to the season, perhaps. UCF coming in as a 5-point favorite. And guys, after tonight, we have 7 bowl games on the schedule for Saturday. Any of them standing out to you here? Like maybe JMU finally getting a shot at the bowl game, despite all the drama, they get in and get a bowl game.
There's no shortage. College football is like we always see those insurance commercials with Mahomes and those guys. It's fun because you get to bundle it. Like on their own, none of these might be as compelling if you're outside of those fan bases, especially because watching, like last night's the perfect example. USF 45-0 drubbing of Syracuse in a game where Syracuse is in between staffs. You got Fran on the sideline wearing a jersey in that game in a way that's really weird, even though he's nailing recruiting. Like it's a chaotic mess of a season right now, Dad. But I think overall, there's some interesting storyline games going into bowl season, mostly because of who's in transition. Like you look at the Birmingham Bowl with Troy and Duke, that to me has become the Notre Dame Bowl because everyone in that game seems to have a tie to us because selfishly we can make it all about the Irish. Since you've got Troy head coach John Sumrall now leaving to take the Tulane job and OC from Notre Dame Jared Parker getting ready to step in as the Troy head coach, while on the other side Duke will be without quarterback Riley Leonard, who's getting set to be the new quarterback at Notre Dame. Right. So this is kind of where we're at in bowl season, Dad, where you're trying to measure who's there, what their motivation is, and how it's going to play out.
Well, that's why I've always said, and how you can pick a bowl game or how you can dissect a bowl game is so difficult because even if you didn't have a lot of what's going on now, you still have coaches that play those young players who they're going to redshirt, that they save the bowl game for their 4th game to get them some time in it as well.
Which, by the way, they don't have to do anymore now. Postseason play, so conference championship games and bowl games don't factor into that 4-game allotment for the redshirt year. No, it's a relatively new rule, but it does mean you do get to see more of your favorite team's young guys, even if you weren't dealing with the rampant effects of the portal gutting your roster.
And obviously, Syracuse is waiting for the arrival of Kyle McCord to save, that program to transfer over from Ohio State after getting the drubbing like they did last night. But listen, I'm glad that JMU got in because it's one of the dumbest rules of the NCAA, of many dumb rules that making the move to FBS. You have a 2-year waiting period, and they're in their 2nd year, and they had a monster year. I mean, just a joke. So I'm glad they got into that bowl game because it's also a sad state when you say because there weren't enough bowl teams to fill all the bowl games. That's also kind of a bad thing as well. But you're right. You don't know who's going to end up playing on the team when these games happen. Just sit and enjoy them. That's why the glut of games is absolutely better than the individual games.
And it just feels like, Dad, that these are like our little blots of joy around all of the other existential drama around college football. Like, again, all of this is going to be happening after Florida State potentially walks into a meeting today with their board of trustees and decides they want to blow up the ACC. Like, that is the backdrop to all of this that's going to happen. Really does feel like the band on the deck of the Titanic playing.
It really does. I mean, I can't wait to hear what comes out of this meeting that's going to go on this morning. Is it going to start that really slow wheel that starts to turn of the next big thing that might happen in college football? And, in that meeting, all I wonder, will it be catered like the college football committee meetings? Will it be that good? Let's hope they get some good, because it's a morning meeting, so maybe a little breakfast buffet would be pretty good.
I feel like they're going to go steak and eggs on this one because as they're tearing into the hide of this grant of rights, trying to figure out their way out, they've got to have bloodthirst on their mind because, Dad, this is a motivated, angry group of people that are also incredibly rich and powerful walking into that room looking to make some change around college football. And again, we will talk to Nicole Auerbach about the potential ramifications of that coming up in about an hour because, Dad, I saw David Hale from over at the ACC Network and ESPN tweet this yesterday. that this is the first time, or would be the first time, that a grant of rights had been challenged by any college team like this. And so there's a lot of other people who are going to have eyes on this situation, wondering if they're going to get a new precedent set that would allow them to make some funky moves after this. All of this is to say is, enjoy the college football that you're going to get this weekend, because it's going to continue to look more and more different as we go along here. Dad, you mentioned the James Madison of it all, too. Even they're not immune to what happens when things get bigger and better, right? Their head coach, Curt Cignetti, takes the Indiana job, so now they're going to be without him going into this game. They weren't even supposed to be here. We had the fight all year long that led to them going on College Game Day and everyone beating the drum for them to try and get eligible for the Sun Belt Championship game, to try and get eligible for bowl season right now. And so this is the perfect reminder game, Dad, as we always weigh motivations. Normally, you would look at this game, James Madison, a 1.5-point favorite, going up against the Air Force Academy. The service academies where you never have to question motivation, never have to question if these guys are going to show up with the intended purpose, but also looking at that team going, all right, well, JMU, I'm sure, is going to be plenty fired up for this opportunity to continue to show people what time it is, and Air Force lost 4 straight games to end the season. So you do feel pretty good about the Duke's chances in this game, a lot better than you would for 99% of FBS football teams walking in their situation.
And this isn't a shot at Cignetti, the coach who's going to Indiana, but imagine if that fight during the season and the appeals they had to the NCAA, if that worked and they got, it all went in their favor because, Cignetti, one of the people out there, obviously camping for his team. Hey, we should be able to. And if they got to do it, and then it was like, yeah, I'm leaving at the end of the year.
Yeah,
I'm gone. I'm moving on. And again, I'm not just picking on him, but just that situation, because coaches are leaving and going to different teams every year. But let's hope we get. All you can hope in these things is you kind of need a scorecard to see who the players are, and sometimes who the coach is, what coordinator has taken over for the bowl game, and then you just hope you get a competitive game.
Exactly, which brings me to the Hawaii Bowl, because I want to remind people what the reason for the season really is with bowl time here. Hawaii Bowl, you got Coastal Carolina taking on San Jose State, 2 7-5 teams. Both got there very differently. Coastal Carolina has been without Grayson McCall, who's been the face of that program. The Chanticleers, when we were back chanting for everyone to rank them years ago, now is in the transfer portal, heading to, I believe, NC State. But he's been injured for the last 2 months. Ethan Vasco is going to be in at quarterback for them. He went 2-1 down the stretch. So they got a shot. San Jose State went 1-5 in their first 6 games, playing the likes of Boise State, opening up the season with Oregon State and USC before getting into the more manageable portion of their schedule and almost working their way into the Mountain West title game. But, Dad, it's not about any of that. It's about the fact that they're in Hawaii around Christmas Eve. And this was the last bowl game that you ever played in as a college player, was then the Aloha Bowl. It was my first ever bowl game as a college athlete at the Hawaii Bowl as a redshirt freshman. And it was bar none. I played in that game. I played in the Sun Bowl. I played in the not the Gator Bowl, the Champs Sports Bowl in Orlando, and the national title. The Hawaii Bowl was by far my favorite because it was basically paid vacation on the island, and then we got to go out there and wax Hawaii.
Yeah, we didn't win my last game. We lost to SMU, and that was my last game in a Notre Dame uniform. But it was out in Hawaii, and I remember that trip that we landed. We went to the hotel, and we're all in a new place. And, you mentioned this a while ago. It's just a new place to drink. And we got all our per diem up front because we were going to be there for a few days. I spent my per diem along with a couple of my teammates in 2 hours at a bar. In 2 hours. Yeah, because we were seniors. We were 21. And even if we weren't, we'd have tried to get into the bar.
Yep.
But yeah, so 2 hours in, it was gone. We had to kind of find Notre Dame alumni around there to buy us drinks for the rest of the time that we were there because we went through our per diem so quickly.
I did the same thing, but in a much more embarrassing fashion. We got a bunch of per diem on the way in, and I spent mine in a couple of hours at the beginning of the trip at the Armani Exchange store. I bought like a Gucci wallet and a bunch of shirts. Imagine a 295-pound, long-haired college freshman wearing Armani Exchange shirts back in South Bend, Indiana. What a mistake. What a time for fashion.
What a waste of per diem money that was.
I got a lot of mileage out of those shirts. I don't know if they ever actually had the desired effect of attracting mates, but man, they looked cool, spread out over 300 pounds of chest.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. So, some news. The Chargers are reportedly interested in Jim Harbaugh for their head coaching job. Now, guys, this isn't the first time that Jim Harbaugh has drawn interest from NFL teams, as we know. So he had an interview with the Vikings 2022, Broncos in 2023. He returned to coach the Wolverines both times. So what do we think about this? Would this be a good fit with ownership, with the money and power we think they would get him? Is there actually a shot this happens just because of the timing of like possibly facing a suspension?
I think so, and I think, Dad, fit's interesting to consider with Jim Harbaugh because I think he's one of the rare guys that I call the universal solvent. Everywhere he's been, he's found a way to win. At whatever level of football he's been involved at, he's been a person that not only can come in and win, but I think is so paramount in this day and age where the leash tends to be pretty short and we want to microwave results is he's a great program jump starter. He comes in and can almost immediately get you up off the mat. Now, most recently at Michigan, we saw then it hit a little bit of a lull and people started to worry about the ceiling, but pretty much everywhere else, Dad, it's been Jim Harbaugh has been able to get your program off life support. And then after that, it was how long you could deal with the personality because he's been considered largely a jackhammer in terms of the effect he can have overall. And I wonder now, because it feels like we've got a different version of Jim Harbaugh at Michigan than the one that was originally broadcasting, oh, he's sleeping over at recruits' houses and he's doing all these satellite camps and he's rubbing everyone the wrong way. You've got the sign stealing scandal now that's taken that place. But overall, he seems to have maybe mellowed out a bit with age and time. And I wonder if now you would be getting the best version of him as a head coach in the NFL.
And also, you know, there are people to say, could he fit in California or in this place or in that place? So remember, he coached in San Francisco up until, 2014, I think he left there. The dude can coach anywhere. He has kind of a weird personality, but he can coach. He can coach football. And if he were to leave Michigan, this would be a la Pete Carroll leaving USC right before, you get nailed for something. Michigan's going to get nailed for something with this, and we'll see if Harbaugh ditches before that. And I say ditches. Listen, he has been flirting for the last few years with the NFL, so it's going to shock no one. Absolutely, or it shouldn't shock anyone if he goes back to the NFL. I think it's going to happen at some point, and when he goes, he's going to get a lot of money wherever he goes. Because when he was in the NFL, he got to the Super Bowl, and now he's gotten to the college playoffs for a couple of years, maybe a chance possibly to win the title this year. We'll see. So I don't question his coaching abilities. Like you said, there was that lull a couple years in a row, losing Ohio State. People started questioning what was going on. But the guy can coach. He can coach football. That hasn't gone away. So and he'll get courted again this year. It's just a matter of he's in a wonderful position of having choices of what he wants to do.
He is, I will say, the reason the Chargers are so compelling, because you look at a lot of the rest of the choices on the map that we've talked about with the jobs and ranking them this offseason. Certainly Bryce Young is going to be your quarterback if you're the Carolina Panthers, but there's so much else that's going to be a difficult slog for that organization that you wonder, would the appeal of all the power I'm sure David Tepper would likely give you outweigh what you know are the limitations and problems with that roster? But I think, Dad, for Jim Harbaugh, he got talked about so often with that quarterback whisperer moniker. And I think at Michigan, we've now been able to raise some questions about that because really until this year, until J.J. McCarthy in the last 2 years, they've struggled to get that guy on campus, struggled to get that guy under center for them. That's a true difference maker in the way he had when he was out at Stanford. And we know the caliber of player he was dealing with Andrew Luck in the the quarterbacks of the NFL with the Niners that he had. He'd walk into a situation with the Chargers where you got that question answered. And now you can go to work on the rest of roster building and leading in a team that seems to be much easier and much more accessible to Jim Harbaugh in the way he's approached this. So to me, you would solve what's been the biggest issue in the latter half or the latter stages of Jim Harbaugh's tenure in college.
So let me ask you this. And we all think right now, and we'll see what other jobs possibly open up, what we look at is the best situation. And we've talked about the Chargers because of Justin Herbert and the offensive firepower that they have there being the best one. So if you're the owner there Are you going after young, say a Ben Johnson, first-time head coach? Older, I don't want to say old because I'm considered old. 71-year-old, if he is available, Bill Belichick, if he is not with the Patriots, or a guy who's a decade younger. Jim Harbaugh is my age. We came out together, 61-year-old, going back into the NFL. So a young Ben Johnson, the oldest of that, Bill Belichick, or a Jim Harbaugh. Which direction would you go?
I think if I was the Chargers, there's something that would be appealing about the growth potential for a guy like Ben Johnson. To get him in now, your primary task is to make sure your offense and your quarterback are taken care of, and it would allow you to divvy up some of the responsibility among coach and GM and make some hires there, because if Jim Harbaugh comes in, if Bill Belichick comes in, now all of a sudden you're dealing with guys that are going to want a little bit more control over that, and I would have major trepidation, especially when it came to Bill Belichick, given his recent track record there. Now, again, with Bill, you would solve for what's been the issue post-Tom Brady, which is they didn't have the quarterback in New England.
Right.
So everything else being built around that, and also being hamstrung by years of the way they did business. Bill famously talked a couple of years ago openly about some of the salary cap issues they had run into by being all in every year, going after the Super Bowl in the late stage Brady era there. But it would solve for that. But I don't know. At this point, Dad, I think we've seen enough from Bill Belichick, the GM, as of late, to where I'd be nervous about that. So a guy like Ben Johnson would allow you to say, hey, we're going to have you do coaching and we're going to have this person do GMing. We're going to make sure you're aligned, but we're going to let you focus on the football portion of it.
And a lot of times you see a team go oppo, like Brandon Staley is a defensive head coach. You see him go opposite and go to an offensive head coach. Now, if you wanted Ben Johnson, reports are out there that Ben Johnson, who has never been a head coach in the NFL, said if he is to become a head coach in the NFL, that he would like $15 million a year. So say you've targeted Ben Johnson. Are you paying Ben Johnson $15 million a year? I'm not.
I do think this is just targeted at one person. Like, you and I both thought the same thing. Yeah. You're just trying to see if you can get David Tepper to do some wild boy stuff, right? You've got a desperate, angry billionaire who really wants his football team to be good and has messed it up along every step of the way with coach and quarterback. This seems like this is targeted advertising.
And also, I'll say, listen, ask for anything you want. And quite honestly, I hope he gets it. I hope he would ask for 15 and get 15. But it could also be one of those behind the scenes, hey, you know what? I'm going to ask for 15. We'll probably get 10 million, which is cool. I'm good with that. So however he goes about it, all good. So when I said I wouldn't pay him 15, I hope somebody does. I hope he gets his money. But boy, oh boy, that is, what would he be? Would you say the third or fourth highest?
He'd be tied for the third highest paid head coach with Sean McVay and Pete Carroll, who I believe are making around $15 million each. So two former Super Bowl winners, ho-hum, decent company there. Dad, who would you take of those three? If you were the Chargers, knowing everything that's at stake for them, knowing some of the old contracts, some of the old skill players they have on that roster, would you want a young upstart coordinator coming to be a coach, or would you want more steady hands there?
Man, that's a great question, Mike. It's kind of skewing toward going younger now, but this team is a ready-to-win team right now, as you mentioned, with some veterans on that team. I would probably go with an experienced head coach for them. For like some of the younger teams that are still trying to build, I may think about a younger coach there. But here, I think I'd have more of the steady, experienced hand.
So would you go Harbaugh or would you go Belichick then? Because I think there's going to be some people that wonder, can you replicate the Patriot way in this short of order? Because there'd be a short-term Band-Aid if you bring Belichick over there.
In all honesty, I'd probably lean toward Harbaugh in this one. Go back to the NFL where he was successful and see if he can recreate it out in California again.
Yeah, there is part of you that wonders if that could be the best option somewhere in between, Baby Bear and Papa Bear in the just right seat for the NFL head coaching search. So we'll wait and see it play out, because there's no doubt at this point in time, based on the jobs that are currently available, this Chargers job is the crown jewel because of Justin Herbert and because you got a few more questions answered there than some of their counterparts. We'll see what else opens up in the meantime as we get to ask big money questions about some of these high-prize coaching names. Coming up next, let's take a look at the encore performance from Ja Morant last night in the NBA.
to GoJo and Golic. Ja Morant made quite an impression when he came back after his 25-game suspension, hitting the game-winning shot against New Orleans on Tuesday night. He was back in action last night as the Grizzlies hosted the Pacers, getting the W, and he followed up his Tuesday debut with another very solid effort, putting up 20 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists in his first home game since returning to the lineup. Now, after the game, Morant spoke about the energy that's been surrounding this team since his return.
Now that I'm out there, I'm making sure that we're all having fun, no matter what. So that was pretty much, just my message. You can just tell by the energy of the team, we catch a lob, you got the bench going crazy, you got the players screaming, yelling, dapping each other up. That's our type of basketball. That's how we are. That's the team we are, people we are. We very, close-knit. I just preach that, man. Regardless of what it is, we got to have fun and, celebrate, the opportunities we have, day in and day out.
I mean, he's definitely provided a boost. Okay, since his return, they've won 2 in a row. They'd lost 5 straight before that.
This is like the ultimate, no duh moment from all of us.
Yeah.
This is why we were so bummed out to begin with when, again, the lowest possible bar wasn't clear. Because, Dad, this is what he made the Grizzlies. You go all the way back to the years prior, this was the Grizzlies team that was starting to nip at the heels of the Golden State Warriors because they had this young, unbridled lack of fear for their opponents. They went into every game like this having maximum fun because in the middle of it, you've got a human pogo stick in Ja Morant who does some of the most impressive things we see on a basketball court and gives all of his teammates the confidence to do that too.
I mean, he missed 25 games. They were 6-19. They were horrible. He's the best player on their team. He's one of the best players in the league. He's a human highlight reel. So yeah, you're right. This is a no duh moment. No doubt. They played 2 games. I won them both. So obviously that's good. And he has played well. But I mean, of course, that was the expectation that this team was going to be better with him on the court. And certainly you get human highlight reel stuff out of him that does jack everybody up. So, yeah, this isn't a shocking thing to me. His ability on the court was never the thing in question, right? The court, anytime he got to the arena and was going to play, you sat there wonderfully as a fan and as a person, as part of the organization. It was when he left that you started to worry. It's when he left the arena that you were like, okay, I wonder what he's doing right now. I hope, you check in Instagram every now and then, hoping nothing pops up, hoping that phone doesn't ring. It's like every college coach out there that has to deal with college players who are, 18 to 22-year-olds. You hope you don't get that phone call, that your player did something dumb. And that's it with Ja. I mean, you're hoping you don't get that phone call because when he's in the building, you got no worries about what he's going to be doing.
I couldn't imagine the absolute shill going down someone in the Grizzlies front office spine if they got the notification on their phone, Ja Morant is going live on Instagram.
Oh,
that's the biggest fear for the rest of the season because it should be more of this. Dad, maybe you could say there is some surprise that it's happening this quickly as soon as he got back. That kind of hiatus where he couldn't be with the team on game day. There were limitations on what he could do. Right. All those things that could have prevented him from having as fast a start going back out there. And you look at the effect it's had on others. Desmond Bane was the leading scorer last night. Him, Ja Morant, and Jaren Jackson Jr. all went over 20 points for, I think, the 6th time in their time together. And they're 6-0 in those games. So it's had the effect that superstars have is they allow everyone else's jobs to become easier. And in a year where you've had so many injuries to this team that have made it difficult for them to start off this season, where they've been 1-11 at home, where they were able to give their home fans something last night, Ja has all of those superstar qualities when he is available. But unfortunately, this has been the problem with the top 2 picks from the draft class with him and Zion Williamson is availability in critical moments. We saw this happen for the Grizzlies down the stretch of a season where they had major postseason hopes, and now it's going to be the hope again because it's early enough for them to turn all of this around, Dad. We talked the other day about the Western Conference standings and some of the teams at the top that are a little bit atypical right now. To me, that says, hey, we got a long way to go to see if this could level out, and the Grizzlies could absolutely be a factor with this version of Ja Morant, provided he remains available.
Yeah, they're third from the bottom, sitting at 8-19 right now, but only a couple of games or a few games away from that 10 slot that the Lakers have right now. So you're right. There's a lot of season left to go. And you mentioned the top 2 pick, Zion being the other one. Zion certainly has had some off-court situations that hasn't gotten him suspended or anything, but still some off-court stuff. But also on the court, Mike,
sure.
Ja has been there on the court for Zion. He's been injured. He's been questioned about his weight, his wind, and what, because there are times you see with Zion on the court, you're like, wow, that's the guy. But other times, he's sitting on the bench because he's injured, or they talk about him being overweight. So his issues at times are on the court, where that's never been an issue for Ja. You just wonder when the next posterizing moment is going to happen with Morant.
I was just going to say, because this game last night, I mean, you're playing the Pacers, who have become one of the darlings of the early portion of the regular season. Tyrese Halliburton and what he's done as a budding superstar in this league now. That's a really quality win for Memphis. But that, to me, is not the sign of, is Ja Morant back or not? The sign of when Ja Morant is back, and I haven't seen it yet. I've watched some of both of these games. I didn't watch the entirety of both of them. I figured if this would have happened, it would have made its way to the internet already. But, Dad, we're all waiting for that first time that Ja Morant takes off and tries to yeet himself over the top of 3 guys in the paint and miss a poster dunk. It is, to me, the indelible mark of Ja's career so far. Not even the ones he's put down, but the dunks he attempts over people that almost always miss, but almost always bring all of us out of our seats. That's when we're going to know Ja's back, when he recklessly launches himself down the lane again at an opposing defense.
Absolutely love that stuff. And then real quickly on the other side, because he's one of our guys from Notre Dame, man, I feel for Monty Williams in Detroit.
Woo,
right?
buddy.
25 straight losses now. They're 2-26, 25 straight losses. The fans last night were chanting, "Sell the team." They're 1 loss away from tying the 76ers and the Cavaliers at 26 straight losses. I don't know. There's no end in sight. They're not going to lose the rest of the games, but it's a horrible year, a horrible start for Monty Williams there. And that's just got to be so mentally brutal for everybody associated with that organization.
That's one where you just walk out of the building at night if you're Monty Williams, you open up whatever your preferred mobile banking app is, and you check that number, and you go, okay, you know what? Things are bad right now. They could be a lot worse. So let's get a palate cleanse before we go to break here, Jesse. We had a delightful, beautiful little interaction between 2 young superstars from different sports in one of those unlikely animal friendship videos.
Yeah, the Blackhawks made a pretty cool thing happen. They brought 2 number 1 overall picks together. So they brought Connor Bedard, Victor Wembanyama together in the Blackhawks locker room. It was really cool. They got to hang out. They got to talk. Wemby, however, blown away by the idea of fighting in hockey.
You watch it? You ever watch it?
A full game, no.
No?
But I love when people just start fighting.
Yeah.
It just looks out of this world. Like
yeah.
it doesn't.
I know, it's crazy.
You've done it? You've done it in game?
I haven't.
No?
No.
Is it like a every game occurrence or?
Probably not now. If you look at like in like the 80s and stuff, it's like 10 times a game. It's pretty crazy. But now I don't know. Maybe every
fist
other
fighting.
game. Yeah. You can just stop the game.
That sounds crazy.
It sounds so crazy because Wemby's like, I would get wrecked if that was, if you could just fight, Wemby would get rocked so hard.
Well, and like Connor Bedard had to try to figure out how to explain, I'm not the one who does the fighting.
Yeah.
I got goons for that. Like people do that to protect me.
Right. Yeah, he was like, have you done it? And Connor Bedard was like, God, no.
I'm good at this.
So if you could pick a sport, Mike, where you could do exactly in that sport what hockey does, where if 2 guys started to go at it, everybody just backed off until they hit the ground. What sport would it be? I wouldn't pick football because you're all padded up. So no one's really going to do a whole lot. What sport would you pick?
I mean, I feel like it only leaves, basketball and baseball, and I feel like
What about
you could
golf?
pick soccer if you want. What about soccer?
What about golf?
Any sport.
Golf.
I would say Jesse's right. You gotta have it be golf. Brooke, like if we had gotten Brooks Koepka and Bryson DeChambeau to actually throw down on the course at a U.S. Open or something like that, that would have been the sports talk gift that kept on giving.
last day before a holiday weekend, so what better way to celebrate than with a holiday theme? Golic acrostic, and of course, what would a good acrostic be without a poem? So here we go. Probably should have worn a Santa hat for this. G is for gather round the tree and watch the AFC West. O as in come all ye faithful if Denver has any faith left. L is for last Christmas when a win led to Stroud as a gift. I because it's the most wonderful time of the year for a playoff picture shift. C is for the Christmas collision between two of the league's best teams. So time to let two jolly Golics tell us what it all means.
There we go. What a way to waltz into the holidays here. Jesse,
True.
I'm glad you stuck with the tried and true poetry hat that we've established on the show here. It wouldn't hit the same with the Christmas hats here. We'll save those. We have a little holiday special coming up for everybody this next week. So you'll see plenty of Santa hats in there as well. But well delivered. And you're right. I mean, I'm chomping at the bit to get to the last one there because we've got like a Super Bowl preview game. God love the poor NBA. You've worked so hard to make Christmas Day your thing, and now you're going to get Ravens and 49ers on that day, and it's just not going to matter.
It's not their day. It's not their day.
It's not their day. But we will get to that, and instead, we will start off, Dad, with Chiefs Raiders here and ask, I think, a pretty interesting question as we look into the rest of this season. Because obviously the Kansas City Chiefs, it hasn't been the same kind of season we normally expect from them. Lots of questions about the wide receiver room, even the defensive standard maybe lately slipping up a little bit. But as they get set for a division game against the Las Vegas Raiders on Christmas Day, they're still the class of that division and kind of the standard bearer for that conference. But I'm wondering, Dad, as we look at the Baltimore Ravens, who are currently the team atop the AFC, are the Chiefs the worst matchup for them in the postseason right now, or do you think there's someone, based on what you've seen from this year, that would actually be a tougher out for the Baltimore Ravens at this juncture, even if they're not within the current playoff structure to allow for the Bills?
No, I think it is Baltimore and Kansas City because I think Baltimore's defense, this Kansas City offense is not what we, have seen. We've seen more high power out of them. Now, getting Pacheco back is going to be huge for them. I love the way that guy runs. But I think Baltimore's defense is the difference. I think these are the two best teams. And I think today, I'd probably take Baltimore. Lamar Jackson's healthy. He's got more receivers to throw to, and the defense is just stifling. And the Kansas City defense has slipped back a little bit. They were a little more dominant earlier in the year. They're not what they were. Now, that doesn't mean they can't regain that a little bit, but I'm a buyer into the overall consistency of the Baltimore Ravens on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the Ravens have, in the last few weeks especially, really looked like they've separated a bit. But I do wonder, especially with Buffalo involved in there, Dad, if you think, given the way that they've played recently, because I think the one thing we've looked at in the last couple weeks is we're trying to figure out what you could potentially do, especially against that Ravens defense. The Rams were the ones that sort of opened the door to, all right, downhill running attack, especially on early downs there to try and make sure you stay ahead of the chains against the defense that wants to do galaxy brain stuff with you. The way the Buffalo Bills have been running the football could certainly be a big factor in that. We saw the way they were able to put that Dallas defense on their heels in a similar fashion. I still ultimately lean Chiefs twofold. One, because of the Patrick Mahomes of it all, the most consistent force of nature, the fact that now their offense, at the very least, has the thing we've been asking for all season long, which is a complete number two threat outside of Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice and what he's become for them there, and a healthy Isaiah Pacheco in the backfield coming back this week, according to Andy Reid. But also on the other side, what Steve Spagnuolo has done consistently as a defensive coach in the NFL in the postseason, creating these wonderful bespoke game plans for opponents, where we've seen at times in the postseason, the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson have run into teams that have gone to extreme lengths, like the Chargers years ago and in the past, to try and stymie that offense especially. So I look at what the Chiefs can do with a downhill rushing attack when Pacheco's healthy, but also what their defensive coordinator's been able to do to a multitude of opponents over a long career in trying to slow down a really incredible rushing attack for the Ravens as well.
It's really interesting when you think about Kansas City and Baltimore, you immediately talk about the quarterbacks. But what a defensive matchup it would be, right? Now, I said Kansas City hadn't been dominant like they were. They're still a top 5 defense. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're still a really good defense. So I just think of what a great defensive game that has the potential of being, because you're so used to those offenses and those two quarterbacks having such success on the field, and how those defenses would try and stop that.
Speaking of the quarterbacks, Dad, I have a feeling we would weight the Kansas City Chiefs even more heavily because Patrick Mahomes went right at your heartstrings. Did you see what he got his offensive line the other day? A whole bunch of golf carts out here for the Chiefs O-linemen in a great gift, a great video that the Chiefs put out showing all this off too. The guys honking their horns, whipping it around the parking lot there. Dad, your prized possession in your life, your golf cart in South Bend, looks like it might need an upgrade based on what these guys were toting around.
Oh, listen, I need an upgrade because I have grandkids now. I have 2 of them, so I got to go to a 6-seater. I do have to get a new one. My question is, though, where are all the guys going to use it? Because now at Notre Dame, where the house is, the golf cart is great because, I mean, I'm 1 block away from campus. The place in Arizona, I would have no need for a golf cart. So I don't know where all these guys live and where the use of that golf cart, because they're great. They're red. They have their name and number on the side of them. So do all of them need them, or can they use them in the neighborhoods they're in? That's my question.
Yeah, different for different stages in life. I'm assuming some of these guys, some of the older players that have been around there, even though it's a particularly young group amongst the starters, like Joe Tooney, those guys probably live in the burbs, probably got enough space to do that. If you're a young guy and maybe you're living closer to where the practice facility of the stadium is, and you're in an apartment, that could be a little more difficult, but they're all making enough money to figure those problems out, and I trust them to do so because golf carts are cool as hell. So congratulations to those boys. And Mahomes for doing right. We are in quarterback gift season, and it is fine to shame some of these guys if they go cheap and try and just give their O-linemen Apple TVs. Let's go to Dad. Come all ye faithful. You got any faith left in the Broncos? I'm curious for your perspective, Dad, because you saw the game where the air got let out of the balloon against the Detroit Lions last week, and now they get set to take on the Patriots on Christmas Eve in a game where I know one thing and one thing only is the under seems to be the play. 34 points set as the over-under on DK Sportsbook right now, and this seems like a real stoppable force meets movable object game in this one, with the Broncos offense especially going up against this Patriots defense.
I mean, I was surprised in calling that Denver-Detroit game in Detroit last week of how Detroit just handled them, especially the way Denver had been playing. Why I probably don't have faith that Denver is going to get it done or get to the playoffs, but I think they're sitting going into the weekend. They were in the 11th slot at 7-7. They have a losing record in the conference when you start looking at tiebreakers for the wild card. Mike, the biggest thing to me is I don't trust their rush defense. While the defense had been playing better, they're still getting run on. When you get run on, you get tired, you get worn out, and you get the other team controlling the ball and controlling the clock. And that's a horrible, horrible recipe. So that's part of the equation, I think, that really holds them back, which kind of stops me from saying, yeah, I still think they got a shot at this.
Yeah, now the tough part for this, and you're right, going forward, I think faith in the Broncos is going to be pretty fleeting for those reasons. An incredibly turnover-dependent team. First in the NFL with 13 fumble recoveries on the season. We talk about it all the time. That kind of fumble luck. And that on the other side, Dad, they're a team that's, I think, in the top 5 or at least the top 6 in turnover margin overall. And that's with the fact that they've lost 11 fumbles on the other side. Like, they've not been particularly great there. But you look at a team like the Patriots, especially defensively, what that means for a team, right? Because the Broncos are 30th in rushing success rate on the season. So they've been incredibly dependent on that. The Patriots defense has just 5 fumble recoveries all year long, yet they are the #1 rush defense in football by a number of different metrics. So they haven't needed anybody's help when it's come to that. Now, as a passing defense, they've got some struggles. And so if you're Russell Wilson and Courtland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy in this game, it's going to have to be on you. And we've seen Sutton and Jeudy put up pretty good numbers in that game prior, both, I think, over 70 yards in that outing. But it's going to be much more on their shoulders than I think this Broncos team really wants it to be in any game plan for them.
Yeah, I agree. It was a heck of a run. It was a surprising run, but Sean Payton was getting out of his team what he thought he could get out of his team. But it's a long season with ebbs and flows, and they were down early and then obviously came up. But I don't think have enough to get where they want to be. So let's see what Sean can build going into next year and in the future.
Great coaching matchup. Sean Payton, Bill Belichick, obviously two all-time greats there. This Patriots defense, by the way, on the cusp of something pretty incredible as a rush defense. They're allowing 3.2 yards per carry on the season, which would be the best in the NFL since the 2014 Detroit Lions if it held for the entirety of the season. So we'll see if they can keep that up. But I think you and I both out on the top-end playoff chances of the Denver Broncos going forward. All right, let's take a look at last Christmas. Last Christmas weekend, the Houston Texans beat the Tennessee Titans, just their second win of the season, that set up a scenario where they won on the last day of the year and fell out of the number 1 pick slot. Remember the will they, won't they between them and the Chicago Bears that ultimately led them to the loving arms of C.J. Stroud and obviously completely changed their fortunes again now. Unfortunately, C.J. Stroud looks like he won't be on the field for this game here. Another Case Keenum start because of the concussion protocol around C.J. Stroud. So, Dad, do we think that the Houston Texans and the rest of this roster has enough to keep them afloat in this game?
I think the Browns, especially that defense led by Myles Garrett, is going to be too good. So I don't see it. While, Tank Dell obviously done for the year. Nico Collins questionable. He had that injury. I thought he'd be gone maybe a little longer, but CJ Stroud out. So I think the long season and attrition has caught up to them a little bit here. They are a great story for this year. Teams that get the second pick of the draft, as bad as they were, are not supposed to be flirting, with the playoffs. And, it's more the exception than the rule. But I do think as the season goes out, it's kind of wearing on them. And for Cleveland, they've gotten a boost from, an older quarterback who just sits in the pocket and slings the ball around and can manage and move this offense and still rely on the defense. We know how defense can win games, especially when the weather starts to get bad outside, especially when you get closer to the playoffs. How good is that defense keeping you in games? So I think it's leaning more toward that scale falling down on Houston a little bit. I think Cleveland takes care of business in this one.
I agree. We got more of the full Joe Flacco experience in this last game. 3 interceptions to go along with the great plays and touchdowns at the end. It's probably going to skew closer to that on the way out. This was a guy that was not in professional football for the majority of this season, but I think you combine that with the fact, and I referenced this stat the other day. I wanted to go pull it to make 100% sure. You talk about how good that Browns defense is. Nate Tice over at The Athletic pulled this stat from True Media. Since the year 2000, the top 20 defenses in defensive success rate through this point in the season, the Browns are currently, since 2000, number 1 in that time in defensive success rate, and if that holds for the last 3 games of the season, would finish at that spot. So they have been one of the best defenses of this millennium so far, and that's why they have been able to do what they've done there. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah had a monster game this last week in addition to what Myles Garrett's done. He's been a really exciting player to watch, so I'm with you. I would lean in favor of them against Texans offense that we've seen really since the Tank Dell injury, starting to slip from that standard a little bit there. The Browns, give them credit. Offensive line's been a mash unit, lost your best running back on Joe Flacco as a quarterback, and they've been able to offset enough to keep this thing moving in the right direction. Dad, let's get to I. It's the most wonderful time of the year. We've got 3 7-7 teams. The Rams and the Saints played Thursday, so obviously that changes a little bit. And 2 6-8 teams battling for 3 playoff spots in the NFC. You and I both, I think at this point, at least I think, I've been beating the Rams playoff drum for a while. I'm assuming after seeing them in person last night, you were on them as well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think some of the things I'm seeing, and I did see it last week in Detroit and talked about it during the game, is the array of offensive firepower. That's usually been reserved for just talking about San Francisco with the number of weapons that you can go to. But Detroit has it. With the 2-headed backfield, Jamison Williams coming on at wide receiver to go with St. Brown and Laporta, who's been, all world as a rookie tight end. And then last night with Kyron Williams and Puka, and you throw in Tyler Higbee and Cooper Kupp, what DeMarcus Robinson did. The array of talent you have, again, the depth of talent on offense can help keep a defense at bay. We always talk about, is the defense on their toes or are they on their heels? And when you got when you can't just zone in on one guy, you bracket one guy and the other guy's running free, so you have other options to go to. And that's what the Rams have. Detroit has that as well. So it's pretty interesting. I've seen now 2 weeks in a row, two offenses showing some real depth with their talent. But without question, it's the Rams. And any team that the Rams is going to play in the playoffs may get that look like you saw from the Michigan players when they saw Alabama was at number 4.
Yeah, they're fully loaded right now. I absolutely expect them to give somebody a froggy out. I saw this posed by one of the guys over on McAfee's show, Dad, and I asked you during one of the breaks, if you had to pick them right now, you saw both of these teams in the last 2 weeks. The Rams facing off against the Lions, and we know all of the connective tissue between those teams, between Goff, Stafford, and every which way. Which way would you lean right now, based on what you've seen? You got probably the best punch of both teams in the last 2 weeks.
I mean, you really have. I mean, Goff had been questionable this year with his play. Stafford had been nicked up, but Goff has a monster game last week. I guess end of day, Mike, I probably trust Stafford the way he's playing now more, even though Goff had a monster game last week. He's been a little more inconsistent at times this year. So I would probably have more faith in Stafford. They both have big rush guys, obviously Aaron Donald and Aiden Hutchinson on the other side of what they can do. But as I mentioned, younger players on that defense as well for the Rams. There's part of me that would probably, and it's tough to even say recency bias because I just saw Detroit last week. It's not like I did them 6 months ago. So I think I would lean toward LA and the stride they're hitting right now.
I would agree. I would absolutely think that's how hot LA's been lately. One other team I think is interesting to throw into the mix as we talk about them, and we just saw them get a win against the Eagles. The Seattle Seahawks, when you look at who they've lost to this season, I understand they're sitting at this record right now. Their losses most recently to the Ravens, the Rams by 1 point, the 49ers twice, and then the Cowboys in a one-score game. That's been a murderer's row of a schedule in the back half of the season, and while they haven't come out on the winning side of it, Dad, we've seen even with Drew Lock in there, they've played some pretty compelling football. So the Seahawks, also a team that can feel froggy and potentially jump. But let's get to the golden goose of the weekend. Monday night, Christmas Day. Jesse, we've got the disrespect card on the table heading into Ravens 49ers.
Yeah, so Baltimore comes into the game as 5.5-point underdogs, and they were asked about how they felt about that underdog status leading into this one.
I think internally we don't feel that way. Externally, I don't know what it is, but whether it's the lack of primetime games we've got or whatever, but I think the 11-3s are not created equal right now in terms of the 49ers versus us, and we feel a little disrespected by that. I feel like we are the best team in the league, and we got an opportunity in front of the country to show it.
I like being an underdog, I don't know. I believe we play better when we're doubted and we're not, people not choosing us to win the game. I feel like we play better all the time, so just do it all the way to February.
Yeah, so I like the attitude from them. I appreciate the confidence. Dad, I'd still pick the Niners to win outright in this game, but I would love the Ravens and the points. I'm fascinated because the offense for the 49ers and the defense for the Ravens are like a mirror of one another. They're the perfect inverse. A ton of really compelling superstar pieces inside innovative schemes that have players that can really do a lot of different things and give opposing units fits. So I'm fascinated to watch that chess match between Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDonald, the D coordinator for the Ravens.
Watching the aggressiveness of this Baltimore defense is so, as a former defensive player, is so much fun to watch. I am so interested. Kyle Hamilton has elevated himself to one of the better safeties in the league. And remember, this guy is 6'6", so what, like 215. He's a monster that can play back, play linebacker depth, play on the line. Of how versatile he'll be in this game, especially against a run with Christian McCaffrey, and then in coverage as well, or if he's a blitzer. We see him, block a ball, pick it, and go and take it the other way. So he is such a key for this defense. At the end of the day, Mike, we just talked about offenses with multiple talent, and you start with San Francisco. And I feel have too much. I think they just have too much. Now, San Francisco's defense has to contain, obviously, Lamar Jackson, but I go with that depth of that offense for San Francisco, and I have to lean that way.
Yeah, 2 MVP candidate quarterbacks in Brock Purdy and Lamar Jackson that do it in entirely different ways. Ravens' #1 rushing attack. We've seen the Niners can get run on. Lamar Jackson is a part of that. I think can stretch Chase Young, stress Nick Bosa. But at the end of the day, I just think the 49ers are in a class of their own right now atop the NFL.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Florida State called a special Board of Trustees meeting for this morning. And while no formal reason was posted for the emergency meeting, multiple reports indicate that FSU's athletic future in the ACC is going to be discussed. And the guys are standing by with one of the people who's in the trenches with this situation to get the rundown on exactly what is going down in this meeting. Fellas, take it away.
Yes, very excited to be joined by Nicole Auerbach, senior writer over at The Athletic, covering college football, also the college football insider for NBC. And Nicole, you've been on this every step of the way as Florida State gets set to shake the bedrock of college football once more. So thanks for giving us some time today. And I guess, Nicole, just as a starting point, how did we get here so quickly with Florida State now looking to make a major shakeup in college football?
Yeah, well, it did feel like it'd take a while, and then that it also moved very quickly because, you know, they have been saber rattling here now for almost a year. We first started to see that private frustration spill over publicly back in February at a Board of Trustees meeting. Then in the spring at ACC meetings, we learned about, hey, there's these 7 schools that have been talking to each other, and they're all looking at and examining this grant of rights document, trying to see what their exit options are. And then, you know, obviously in August, there was that fiery board meeting where you had trustees and the school president admitting that they might need to leave the ACC. And you had Board of Trustees members saying, hey, we need to have an exit plan by next August. And so from August to now, we've been focused on football. We've been dealing with the actual on-field product. But obviously these were still, conversations and things that were happening. And, I was talking to folks and sources told me earlier in the week that the CFP snub, obviously it wasn't directly related to Florida State being in the ACC, but it reinvigorated a lot of these conversations and it accelerated the timeline on potential action. And then, as you mentioned, today is the day. The Board of Trustees will be meeting shortly. They put out their public agenda. It says legal matters related to the Department of Intercollegiate Athletics. I think we all know what that means. So today could be the first real concrete step towards doing something that they've talked about, that we know Florida State has wanted to do, and a lot of other ACC schools may want to do too, which is challenge the grant of rights and see if they can get out of the ACC.
So Nicole, can you explain that a little further with the grant of rights and how to get out of that and kind of keep it simple for me so I can understand it, let alone other people around the country who keep hearing the term grant of rights and then kind of glaze over?
Yes. Okay. So the best way to think about this is it is a legally binding document that is signed the length of the media rights deal. And it essentially, like, you're attached to all of the other schools in your conference, and it's your publicity right. So it's your rights to broadcast home games. And it's essentially like the visibility of what you're doing. So essentially, like, Florida State could pay an exit fee and leave the ACC. But if they can't get out of the grant of rights, then the ACC owns all of Florida State's home games in all of these sports, right? So it doesn't work that way. And we also don't know at this point what the dollar figure would be to buy your rights back. And that's, I think, part of this. If they do challenge the grant of rights to get some legal clarity here, is like, hey, is there a dollar figure? Is this legal? Is this enforceable? Or are there other options for us to get out of this without paying some exorbitant amount of money? So that's really what we're going to get more clarity on. But it's essentially a legally binding document that ties Florida State to all the other ACC schools and all of their rights to all of their home games until 2036.
Nicole, we've seen a lot of other conference realignment go on in recent years. Obviously, Texas, Oklahoma, USC, UCLA have spurned on so much. Is there any precedent for what Florida State's about to go through now, or are they about to set it?
Good question, because I wanted to say that they'll set it, but we also have been dealing with a number of lawsuits recently of members suing their own conference. Like, we just saw this with the Pac-12 and Oregon State and Washington State, and Michigan was threatening to sue the Big Ten over Jim Harbaugh suspension. So, like, that part is not unprecedented, but this idea is, and it also just feels like a point of no return, right? Like, we've heard FSU complain about the ACC and about the revenue gap with the Big Ten and SEC now for almost a year. But actually taking legal action to start the process to extract yourself from your conference that you've been in since 1991, that is a different level. And I think what's important when you think about the precedent, Mike, is if this is successful or if they figure out a way out before 2036, I mean, what about Clemson? What about UNC? What about these other schools that we know would also possibly want to get out and see what their options could be? So that's where this could be just the first of other dominoes, and that would set off a massive round of realignment, because right now, to date, those schools in the ACC have not been available. They have not been targets for the Big Ten and SEC because of these legal documents.
To that point, and it's Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, North Carolina State have talked about this as well. For lack of a better term, if Florida State goes forward with this, could the other schools jump in and make it for like a class action suit? Would they all jump on the backs of Florida State, or would they each have to do it individually?
So I am not a lawyer, although I feel like I should get like an honorary degree having covered so many different lawsuits in college sports this last couple of years. But my instinct would be, based on conversations I've had, would be that they would have to do things separately because you don't want to collude. You don't want to have action that is premeditated and collusion. So I would think that obviously you're watching, and this is why it's so fascinating. This board meeting is going to be streamed publicly because of the state laws in Florida, sunshine laws. But there's a lot of other interested parties in the ACC because if the path that Florida State eventually takes is successful, well, then you've got to think that Clemson or some of these other schools could challenge on similar grounds or similar process, maybe even a similar lawsuit and language. And that would be the big snowball. That would be, as you mentioned, like Oklahoma, Texas to the SEC. Like, it would be a seismic move in college sports because these schools have been operating under the assumption, the ACC, the rest of the industry has been operating under the assumption that they were not available until 2036, which feels like forever from now. And that's how it feels to Florida State. So they are going to try to figure out if they can get out before that and what it would cost to do so. So that's what's really interesting, because certainly other schools could follow, but it always felt like Florida State was going to be the one who was willing to go first, willing to take all the arrows and deal with this and see if it can work.
Nicole, about a minute left here. If this goes through and Florida State does essentially declare war on the ACC today, is this the beginning of the end of the conference? Do you see them going the way of the Pac-12, or is there a way Jim Phillips and company can salvage this a la the Big 12?
That's a good question. And I think, you look back at what happened with Cal, Stanford, and SMU, and a way that I was thinking about it at the time was a preemptive backfilling in case you do lose members down the road. It keeps you at a certain minimum that maybe fulfills the contract with ESPN about the size of your contract, your league. But also what we saw with the Pac-12 was like they were losing members and not replacing them. And all of a sudden you wake up one day and you only have 4 members and it's just not feasible. And the schools are fleeing and trying to figure out where to go because they don't think they can rebuild. So I think the idea of strength in numbers is important. But yes, if you lose one of your most valuable brands and other ones could potentially be out the door as well, that is also a totally different world. But, this is all interconnected and it's fascinating. It's going to be a fascinating couple months here.
It's going to be a fascinating couple months that starts with a meeting getting going in just a few minutes. Follow her on Twitter at Nicole Auerbach to get all of the latest news and notes on this situation and the rest of what's going on around college football. Nicole, thanks so much on a busy day, bud. We really appreciate you.
All right. Thanks for having me.
So, again, that meeting is going to get started at 10 a.m. And if you're not following Nicole Auerbach, to make sure you get all of the important nuggets that come out of that meeting in case you don't want to live stream essentially a court hearing and a board of trustees meeting, you're making a big mistake.
It's going to be interesting where this meeting goes. But then, Mike, the entire process, we know how things can drag out, of how long this process, if it goes forward, would actually take, where we'd see some meaningful change.
Again, I don't doubt the timeline being sped up for any of this anymore based on what we've seen. There was a time nearly 2 years ago where I would have said this stuff would have taken about a decade. Now I look at this and say we could be mere minutes away from the kind of chaos that we've become accustomed to in college football. Strap in, everybody. Let's get ready.
GoJo and Golic. It is time for this week's Chunky Spicy Picks, presented by Campbell's Chunky Soup that eats like a meal. Head to DraftKings.com/chunky to play in this Sunday's free-to-play prediction pool for your shot at a bite of $5K in prizes. All right, fellas, let's make those chunky, spicy picks. Where are we going?
Yeah, my tortured relationship with spicy picks continues, although I did hit that Cortland Sutton over last week in the Broncos game, so felt pretty good about that one. It's been a week-to-week exercise in trying to figure out the vibes on this thing. But we love soup that eats like a meal. We love spicy soup, and we love spicy picks. So, Dad, I'll let you start this off here. Who's the player that you have circled for the spicy pick of the week?
Well, it's a guy we just talked about a little bit ago in the biggest game of the weekend, the last one on Christmas, again, that's going to make NBA fans bummed when most people are watching the NFL, and they're going to be watching the San Francisco-Baltimore game. I'm going with Kyle Hamilton. What he has been able to do and progress to. Remember his rookie year, they kind of was moving his position a little bit. They weren't sure of how they were going to play him, and he's turned into one of the top safeties now in the league. He's third on Baltimore's team. This is a defense that's second in the NFL. They're an unbelievably great defense. He's third on the team in tackles. He has 3 sacks. He has 10 tackles for loss. He has 10 passes defense. He has 2 interceptions. One of those went for a touchdown, and he has a forced fumble. So to see what he's going to be able to do in this game, as I talked about a little earlier, whether it's on the line, trying to put pressure on Brock Purdy, playing the run to keep Christian McCaffrey at bay from running the ball, or in coverage on who he's going to coverage from tight ends to running backs on where he's going to go on this defense. While there are, listen, obviously great players on this defense. You don't get to be the second best or best defense by not having some great players. Roquan Smith, their leading tackler, we know what he does. But Kyle Hamilton is so versatile. He is what that safety position has become, of guys who could play deep, play mid, play on the line. That's what that position has to be, and he's doing it incredibly well right now. So I think if Baltimore is going to win this game, his versatility has to show, and just like his stat line showed of all the different things that he can do, he's going to have to do a little bit of that on the line, right off the ball, or in the secondary.
I actually think, and I said that offense for San Francisco and the defense for the Baltimore Ravens are mirrors of each other because of Kyle Hamilton and George Kittle. Like, them to me represent the same idea. I think you are able to dictate terms on your side of the ball by having the most options. And that's why San Francisco has traditionally been so difficult to spot, because you do have guys like Debo, like Christian, like George, who can do so many things, especially in the middle of a defense. You've got to account on every play. You know this, Dad. When you're a defensive player going up to watch an offense in the beginning of a play, you know, based on formation, based on personnel, and based on alignment, they got a menu of things that they kind of like to do. There are certain plays that they want to run out of this, certain things I can expect as a defensive player. That menu becomes the Cheesecake Factory when you've got the guys that the San Francisco 49ers do. And with all the motion they use there, they're doing things that are actively trying to slow you down. That's what Baltimore's defense does. All of the things they do with how they pressure, where they move personnel, how they walk Kyle Hamilton all over the place is designed to make the offense do the exact same thing. We've talked about it with their pressure packages time and time again throughout the year. And so that's why I think it's fascinating. Who's going to be able to dictate the terms in this game? The Rams did it a little more against this Ravens defense than we're accustomed to seeing with them. And so I'm fascinated to see who's able to take the bull by the horns, because their side of the ball has enough options to make the other side really sweat.
It is always interesting with all the motion. And in the game I did last night, the Rams, which is a high motion team, they're motioning more this year than any other year in the Sean McVay era. Cooper Kupp, his step count alone before a play even starts with his motion is unbelievable. When you're a defense, you're right, Mike. With all the formations and motions, you get your game plan and everything is broken down. You know, there were analytics before this era of analytics of what you saw, formation down and distance, what plays they normally run. And the one basic thing, though, you have to always understand as a defensive player is believe what you see. Believe your eyes. You know, you're watching things on tape. Believe it, okay? Now, every now and then they try some kind of trickeration, but believe what you see. Believe the film that you're watching. And because all that motion, you're trying to confuse, you're trying to get guys, not be able to get manhandled at the line of scrimmage. There's a variety of reasons for the motion, but as a defense, you just have to settle in, know what you're supposed to do, know your responsibility with motion, what you're doing, whether it's man, whether it's zone, how you have to play it, and just believe what you see. But that said, the motion, some of the top teams are the ones that motion a lot.
You mentioned the Rams team on offense last night, according to, I believe, Next Gen Stats, featured pre-snap movement on 90% of their plays, which would have been the third highest rate in an NFL game this season. And you're right about the Niners. One thing they've done with personnel, too, is they've been able to really get at base defenses on the other side, which is going back to your pick, why Kyle Hamilton is so important, because he can kind of be what breaks the wheel when it comes to that, where normally you'd be getting a slower linebacker body on the field because you need someone big enough to handle what the other team's going to do in the box. Kyle's got enough of that for you, and so he makes this a very, very interesting proposition. For my spicy pick, Dad, kind of similar vein. It's been fascinating to watch the discourse this week around the Dallas Cowboys. And one player in particular coming off of last week's game in Buffalo, not Dak Prescott on the offense, but Micah Parsons is my pick for spicy player of the week on defense. Getting ready to go up against this Miami Dolphins offense that we know is such a juggernaut, that we've seen at times undone by pressure in the right places up front, especially with a beat-up and shuffled offensive line for Miami. I've been fascinated watching people, Dad. Micah Parsons made the switch to be more primarily an edge guy this season in how he was used. And I saw even he was addressing on Twitter the other day a growing number of people in the Cowboys who want to move him back to off-ball because of some of the issues they've had against the run there. Dad, I completely disagree with those people, as did Micah Parsons, who understands that he is still one of the most dangerous players in the NFL in terms of the pressure he applies on opposing offenses and what his effect does for the other guys on his defensive line, being in that spot of the edge as opposed to off the ball in a little bit more no man's land.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say, Mike, I mean, when you get him off ball, to mix it up, I love him off the edge as well, but then you know where he is, like just like with Aaron Donald. When Aaron Donald lines up, you pretty much know which way you're going to slide. You're going to get help there. When he's on the edge, you can slide that way. I kind of like when he's off ball and rushes as well, because he can use that into stunts, rush straight or stunt. So I would be one of those that would like to see a mixture of his versatility of either on edge or off ball as well.
I think off ball is different than in the middle. Like, we've seen guys like Myles Garrett and him line up over centers, but even he pointed out, if people watch film, they take shots and pass more when I'm off the ball or out of the game. We know so many offenses come to the line of scrimmage and you got 2 or 3 plays in the arsenal and you're looking for a couple of keys in there. And if you see, hey, I don't have to worry about Micah Parsons on this play rushing the passer, or at least being as directly threatening up near the line of scrimmage, now all of a sudden this is our opportunity to take a shot, because our offensive line's breathing a sigh of relief. Every snap that Micah Parsons is not going towards the quarterback is a win for the other side of the football, because that's the best pitch the Dallas defense has to offer.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I do. But there's also the part of me that says he's your best pass rusher. If the weakest link of an O-line is a guard, I want to get him on there. And I know you can do that with a stunt. I know you can do that with a tackle end stunt. I get it.
You and I are talking about the same thing. I'm meaning like true off-ball stuff. That's what people are talking about. Like, they want him lining up in the box at linebacker like that, which to me is ridiculous, was probably always more of a pipe dream, because when you watched him even coming out of college, his best reps were going downhill at the quarterback.
All right, then we're in agreement. Yeah, I put him off ball, but rushing. Move him around, get him standing up, rushing a guard if you can get him in a one-on-one situation. Rushing the quarterback, not always just from the edge position. So you're right. We're saying the same thing.
Exactly. And especially with this Miami Dolphins outfit, I think the last place that you would want him is off the ball, where another team makes use of so much of the pre-snap motion, is going to try and do so much to get guys open in the middle of the field, has all that team speed. I want him with the most direct path. If you looked at any time the Dolphins have slipped up this season, it's when you're able to get quick, easy pressure on Tua Tagovailoa, and based on some of the personnel changes that have gone on along this Miami offensive line throughout the year, I want 11 going towards the quarterback on, like you said, the best matchup, wherever it is across the board, because when you can make Tua uncomfortable, you got a chance to throw a pebble up in what's been a Ferrari engine for the Dolphins offense on every other outing for most of this season. All right, time to finish this off the way we always do and send you into a little holiday break here. We're going to get a lot of best of material for you guys next week. We got a great Christmas special lined up, and I have always wanted to be a part of a Christmas special. So we got real holly and real jolly around these parts with some stuff that you guys are going to love. So keep an eye out for that next week as we're going to take a little holiday rest and recovery on this side. But we got plenty to send you off right into this one here. 3 quick stories to send you off into this holiday break. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review, leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKingsNetwork.com, the YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, and more. And if you miss any of us live, make sure you check out us wherever you get your podcast so you can hear great guests like Nicole Auerbach, senior writer over at The Athletic and college football insider for NBC, who came by to get us ready for what's going on with Florida State that could once again mix up the whole college football bag. You can also catch that right here on YouTube as soon as we're done with the show at 10 Eastern. We will get to the egg challenge that is breaking the internet and forcing men back into a position of saying dumb things online. It's me. I am men. After this word from Wrangler, because we're brought to you by Wrangler, folks. Jeans, shirts, and jackets made for the ride of life so you can be ready for cooler days and longer nights in styles that keep you warm, keep you comfy, moving and looking great no matter where you are. You can wear Wrangler jeans literally anywhere, at work, out at night, playing a pickup game with friends, or at home, watching the game on TV. They're that comfortable. They're that durable. And there's a Wrangler shirt for every occasion, casual tees, snaps and button-ups, or layer them together for a little bit of both. And don't forget the iconic Wrangler jackets. When the weather starts to chill and you need to venture out, Wrangler will keep you ready for anything. So add some Wrangler to your get-up with jeans, shirts, and jackets that look great, fit great, and move great, so you're always ready for whatever life throws at you. Save 15% on your first Wrangler.com order when you use promo code GOJO15. Wrangler for the ride of life. Now, yesterday on the internet, the ride of life took us to an interesting place. Saw a woman going viral on TikTok, and it made its way over to Twitter, saying that she had dated a man during this last year that was part of a fantasy football league. And the loser of that fantasy football league every year had to do one particular task: eat an egg for every year of your age inside of 24 hours. And the person she was dating lived in fear of this challenge, the amount of eggs he would have to consume in 24 hours. But as she notes here, once she introduced this to the rest of the male population in her life, that's where things got interesting.
I told several of my male friends about this. I told my fantasy football league about this. And I said, oh my God, isn't this like the most upsetting thing you've ever heard? Can you imagine having to eat 30 eggs in one day? And the number of men who were like, that would be easy. It would be easy to eat 10 3-egg omelets in a day. So I started asking like every man I know. Men in their 40s were saying this. That'd be easy, it's fine. I am almost scared to post this because of the number of men that I know I'm going to have in my comments being like, that would be easy. If you and your boyfriend are on the rocks and you are trying to give yourself that final push, I implore you to go ask him how many eggs he thinks he could consume in one waking day, because you are going to be horrified.
She's not wrong. She's not wrong, because my first reaction in boy math was I could absolutely smoke 34 eggs in a day.
I love how she also low-key was like, this was the nail in the coffin to my relationship. Like this egg situation.
Well, let me tell you, the next day would be a horrific day.
Yeah.
That's for sure. That would be the nail in the coffin. 34 eggs, not a problem. Not even an issue. Now, I'm 61.
Yeah.
That might be that I'm going to say, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I do 34. I could do hell. Your sister, my daughter Sydney's husband, Ben, he eats 12 at a sitting.
Yeah,
I
easy.
mean,
he would
might
destroy this, because Ben's
61.
what? He's like 29 at this point, right? So he'd be south of 30 eggs. He would annihilate this. This is truly a slow Tuesday for him.
I mean, Senior, I think you could do it because you have 24 hours. Like, we'd have to be waking you up in the night.
There's no way you could eat
omelets.
61 eggs. That's terrifying.
61 will be tough. I usually eat, like when I'm going to, after a workout, when I'm going to eat something, I'll probably throw 5. In there, maybe scrambled or over easy or something. I could do that easily a few times. I could get to 34. 61 would be tough. And then the next couple days would be even tougher, quite honestly.
The more I think about it, too, in terms of style, because people ask how you would prepare them. She talked about omelets. I think you got to scramble them. I think you need the least amount of excess in this. You don't need them baked out at all. You don't need anything else in there. And the more I think about it, eating hard-boiled eggs, it's too much mandible action. There's too much chewing here. You're going to get sore. You're going to think about it too much. You need the mental side of this taken care of as much as the physical. And I think scramble allows you to almost swallow it whole like a whale.
But there's also no rules about, I mean, you could do scrambled, you could do some hard-boiled, it's not like you have to choose the form of egg for the whole time.
And listen, I understand that, but still, I think you've got to go for efficiency over mixing it up just for your own mental state here. I truly think I could do this. At some point, I think I'm going to have to, because she called out everyone in the subsequent video saying I got a lot of men talking and not a lot of men doing. So we're people of action, not people of words here.
Okay, then it's confirmed. GoJo will be doing the egg challenge at some point. We'll figure out an exact date and time for that, and we will have you just basically record yourself all day.
There we go.
Just not when any of us are together, though.
Yeah, we don't want to be present for that.
We'll save that for a solo venture there. Let's get to that and someone who also would have trouble with this at his age. Jaromir Jagr, 51 years old, apparently too old to eat that many eggs, but not too old to stop playing professional hockey, Jesse.
Absolutely ridiculous. He's in his 36th pro season. That sounds absolutely insane. He recorded a point in his first game of the year, and it's for, I can't really say it. Kladno is the team he's with. He was playing Pardubice. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Long story short, he actually made his debut for this team back in the day. Now he owns it, and he's literally still playing in it, which is insane.
Bro, go home.
Go home.
Like, rest.
Please.
Dad, could you have imagined trying to lace up and do anything that competitive once you hit your 50s?
I see guys when I go to these games now hitting full speed and hitting each other and hitting the ground and can't believe I put my body through that. When you're young, you don't even think about it. He's not that young. He's 51. I can't imagine. And he's in a physical sport, of hitting someone and falling down. And he skated, about 13 minutes or 14 minutes in this game? Hey, listen, congrats to him. If you still love it, do your thing. But my God, I get sore just watching them.
Absolutely. I wonder if it's like the situation where they put Putin out on the ice and everyone was too afraid to actually do anything to touch him. So he just gets to kind of give his free run to the net. Let's get to the third, though. Speaking of space in between important ideas, Jesse, Cameron Diaz made waves the other day wanting to normalize separate beds for married couples and didn't even stop there.
Yeah, she actually then kept going and said, to me, I have my house, you have yours. We have the family house in the middle. I will go and sleep in my room. You go sleep in your room. I'm fine. So this is the most Hollywood thing I've ever heard. Like, celebrities are so far removed from reality. They're taking marriage and I don't know what they're turning it into. It blows my mind. Like, how about we normalize just saying less? If you want to have a separate bedroom, a separate house from your husband, you don't have to tell us about it.
This is what happens when you go on podcasts. This was on the Lipstick on the Rim podcast. She's been married to her husband, Benji Madden, since 2015. Podcasts have a way of making you say a little bit too much. We should know we host one. But, Dad, this is one of those things where maybe, I want to know what the straw was. We talked about the egg challenge before. Was there like an egg challenge moment? Was there some sort of habit that made her decide, I really need space from what you got going on over there?
But how about separate, just stick with the separate beds. Because, listen, most people have separate houses. I mean, give me a break. They're so lost in reality. It's a joke. How about just separate beds, to sleep in? Because, we hear those, I hate, when my husband or my wife tries to cuddle at night, I want to sleep. I want separate spots. To which I'd say, if you're going to have separate beds that you each sleep in, don't you need a third bed?
Yeah, well, she said that. She
know
said,
what I'm saying?
Just a sex bed?
They would have separate, she said they would have separate bedrooms and then a bed that was she referred to it as relations.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
If you're referring to it as relations, I probably imagine there's not a lot of those relations
going on.
Cameron, it's sex.
Yeah.
It's sex. Go ahead and say the word. A sex bed and then 2 sleep beds.
Yeah.
Okay?
Say it, you coward.
This shows you where I'm at in my life. When I go on the road and I get a hotel room, I always try and get one with 2 queens so I can have a snack bed. I call it my road game bed in the room. I put all my luggage on there and then I go eat the snacks on that bed.
So true. You can eat your room service in there. It's amazing.
Snack bed greater than sex bed. If you agree, download, subscribe, rate, review. Leave us a 5-star rating. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. Look out for the Christmas special. We love you. Talk to you soon.